Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. Welcome back to a new episode. Also, a kind reminder that we are a Gnostic TV these days, and the clips are still on YouTube. My guest today comes from Australia. Her name is Julianne Evans. Julianne, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Claudio. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for your time today.
And just to mention to the viewers that what they see on the screen is not a technical difficulty. It's just your way of protecting your privacy and for them to stay focused on our discussion and not be distracted by anything else.
Exactly.
I will start with, an easy question, which I ask most of my guests, which are for the first time on the podcast. How did you stumble on your path of wellness and healing others and spirituality in general?
Well, I made a conscious decision, I think, a few years back to sort of figure out how to hone in on doing sessions. But in hindsight, who I am now is who I have always been. But I didn't realize that other people were not having the same experience as me of being human. So I have this ability to read people's unconscious, which is 0 to 6. And that is where we live from and we create our reality. So for me, I just thought, well, like we all do, everyone's having the same experience as me, but we're not. We're all having individual experiences. So I thought everyone could read people's unconscious, everyone could read people's energy, everyone had telepathic ability. And it's only sort of in the last few years when I made a decision to do this work, and I see now I was being prepared before COVID to really have it highly developed, because we're moving into the energetic age now, and people are now far more open to energy work than they were before COVID, because I think COVID came to wake us up and to make everyone be in a relationship with themselves and learn how to work with their energy. And that's what I do. I don't believe I'm special. I just think I have access to something that we all have access to, but I have it highly developed so that I can teach it and awaken it in others. And it's an inner technology that allows us to understand our relationship with ourselves and the world around us, and to stay self-regulated and to live from peace and knowing, as opposed to being in fear or hypervigilance or anxiety or depression. We can let go of the lower frequency stuff and really have an experience of being, that heaven on earth. That's the saying. That's what we've come to achieve this time, and self-love. But we're in this awakening process. So I think, yeah, really only recently, the last sort of before COVID, I would say that I sort of came to realize, well, I've got access to something, and if I can really master it, it can serve to help people. And that's what I've been doing.
That's great, and I totally agree with you. And as we speak, I'm putting together a conference called Holistic Wellness, and a majority of my guests resonate with what you said, because they consider COVID a wake-up call for humanity and for those which are on kind of standby to be activated and start their light work journey. And I consider myself one of them, because I started the podcast in 2020 to expand this type of work without knowing in what direction this journey will take me. I wasn't sure how much longer I'm going to last in this environment, and if I'm going to have enough guests, and if I'm going to be able to sustain the energy that is required to put into something like this, because it's not easy. And yes, they all say that that was a test to see how humanity will react, and a lot of people were activated and awakened. by the dramatic events that took place all over the world, and especially in Australia, Canada, US, and UK, pretty much on the Commonwealth countries, which were more dramatic and drastic than anywhere else in the world.
Yes, we in Melbourne, we had a 2-year lockdown. So people were forced. I mean, there was no negotiation. You have to get into a relationship with yourself and you have to prioritize your mental health. But I think it was a gift of a lifetime because the world had become pre-COVID, narcissism had become so commonplace and so accepted. And it's the first time in the history of the world where everyone was experiencing the same trauma at the same time and were forced to think about their mortality. And I think a lot of people don't do that. And now they are. I have this amount of time on earth. What have I come here to do? What's important to me? What are my values? And what's my purpose? And how do you do that if you're not in a relationship with yourself and you're constantly distracting by going outside of yourself? And COVID stopped that. It was like we were locked away and we had to be in a relationship with ourselves. And I think a lot of people found that very difficult because that inner technology I'm talking about was not activated, like they just went into primal fear. And the stories they were telling themselves about what was happening to them, people have an unconscious belief that their emotions will kill them. And they won't. They just allow you to navigate how to up level and to live your best life. But if you don't have the manual, and it all comes from the unconscious. So my ability to read things, my friends call it speed dating for mental health because I can just speed it up really quickly because I can read that unconscious stuff. And each person is a snowflake. No two people are the same. So the great thing about what I can do is I can just tune in what is unique to that person's blueprint. And that's the manual that gets taken away when you're born, right? And you're sort of walking in the dark trying to create and figure out what you came here to do. But if you can get back to, well, what did I come here to learn and grow from? Everything serves you and nothing is negative because everything's an opportunity to learn, and you can tap into emotional freedom. And I think that's where I get people to, by sort of getting the pebble out of people's shoe is what I call it. You can walk, but it's uncomfortable. If you can get that pebble out of your shoe, you're in emotional freedom. And when you're in emotional freedom, you're in complete alignment and you can manifest and receive. But when you're in fear, you're not conscious that every day you're getting up and recreating the early days of your childhood. And when we're kids, we don't have access to intellect and language, but we feel everything intensely. So we tell ourselves stories that aren't necessarily true, and we take on the belief systems of our caregivers. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be released. And I say to people, what allows you to survive the first half of your life will hold you back in living in the second half of your life. And I think COVID just came in and just made the whole world wake up that, you know what, it's time to fall in love with yourself and understand your journey.
Yes, and you also mentioned a keyword, narcissism. And I personally know at least 4 women that are breaking away from their narcissistic husbands. And I think that the COVID time triggered this type of relationship to come forward and show the men and the women, I mean the partners, what they are standing for, if they love each other, if they have any feelings for each other, if it's worth pursuing and staying together for the remaining of their lifetime, or they have to split and find happiness somewhere else. And I think you come into the picture perfectly here, that you can help these partners, either men or women, to find their balance, as you said, eliminate that people in the shoe, and be happy with themselves first before jumping on a new relationship that can lead them to the same outcome.
100%. That is such a great point you've just made, because I talk about this all the time. if you don't understand and know yourself 100%, you're only going to attract somebody who is a reflection of where you are at in your life. So if you're not 100% healed, and you perhaps have early trauma or there's unresolved pain, are you actually in love with that person, or is it just that your pain levels match? And people will say to me, I've had women say, oh, I can't stop thinking, oh my gosh, I'm obsessing about this guy. And I might run for your life, because that's not love, it's pain. You know, love is a slow, effortless burn, like a warm bath, and everything feels shinier. And people have this false illusion, because a lot of us, look, a lot of people have had difficult childhoods or had early traumas that are unresolved, that they haven't processed. And they don't realize that feeling the intensity of pain of somebody else is just your addiction to pain, not love. So if you're not in love with yourself first, how can you love somebody else? And then you get into this relationship, and I see it all the time, and it's exactly what you said. I helped navigate. There were so many marriage breakups during COVID, because people actually realized they didn't like each other, but it was sort of trauma bonding in the beginning. They were trying to get relief from something they didn't understand. And there's been a very conventional model that people have been raised with, which I think now is getting broken down for the better, that there's somebody out there, and once you find them, you'll never feel pain again. You'll never feel alone. You'll feel unconditional love. Well, no, actually, that's an illusion. It's all inside of you. And once you tap into that within yourself, the world can only reflect that back to you. And then you will find the person that reflects that back to you. But I think COVID sort of put a line in the sand that actually people have to now reflect, is it love or is it pain? And there's a lot of pain addiction. I've seen it with clients, trying to get people like off their addiction to pain when they think it's love. It's such a challenging thing, because it's all conditioned by the thought process. So if somebody's unconscious, it just goes back to that unconscious pain body, 0 to 6, of reflecting on what the inner child went through and putting language around it. Because when we're little, we feel everything intensely, but we don't have language. So that part of us has to be addressed. But that's the all-knowing being. That's the most powerful part of us that comes up for healing. And people call, when the inner child is awakening and reaching out for you to go through this transition, people say, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I can't leave my house. And they describe the emotions, but to me, that's the inner child reaching out, because kids don't have language, but they have emotions. But we haven't been educated on how to nurture and heal that part of ourselves.
Yes, and something else we have to realize, that when we marry at 25, 27, we are still young. We might not have defined all our principles in life, and it's a physical attraction and love with the partner. But in time, we might grow into different interests, and we might not grow together towards this interest, and we grow apart. And at one point, we really have to, if we want to be happy, and we understand that happiness is not the common ground in the existing relationship, we're going to have to cut the cords and move towards our life purpose. And we should put the ego aside, which will say that, oh, I've been betrayed, or I've been dumped, or we have to eliminate that and erase that idea from our mind, because that will be a continuous struggle, will be a turmoil, a torment on our mind, and we won't end up being happy.
Well, everyone is your teacher, right? That's what I personally believe. These crises, you get a tap from the universe, and if you don't do something about it, there will be upheaval further down the road. So it's either a marriage breakup or a car accident or a loss of a job, but you get emotionally ambushed in a way to awaken you to consciousness and saying you're off track. And it's time to reflect and deal. You've got to observe and reflect and create change. to live your authentic life. And that takes courage. A lot of people bury it because they don't like to be uncomfortable. That's the bottom line. But when it comes in, there's no negotiation. So are people like, is it the worst thing that ever happened to you, or is it the best thing? Often the worst thing, in a year's time, you say, that's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
And the best thing that happened to you, you go, oh, it's the worst. I can't believe I agreed to that. So, nothing is right or wrong. It just is according to the story you're attaching to it. So I always try and encourage my clients to reflect on attaching the correct story. And that is, life is working for you and everything is serving you and everything is an opportunity to grow. You may not be able to see it in the moment, but to just remember that your emotions will not kill you and that this too shall pass.
Yes, and as I usually say, let go and let God in. That will be a beautiful principle for everyone to apply.
Yes, my mantra is, I surrender, please help me. It works miracles.
Yes, indeed. Julian, you mentioned that prior to COVID, you were prepared for this work. So if you may share with us what the preparation was all about, how did they or the universe work on you, prepared you for this after COVID time?
Well, I feel I always had the calling to do it, but it sort of happened by accident. I had somebody visit me at my house and they brought somebody with them, and the person had had an ongoing back pain for a long time. And as I always did, I said, oh, don't worry, I can help you with that. I didn't know this person. And they sat down and I started getting all this information about their ex-partner and their parents and this, that, and then we talked for about half an hour. And she got up and she said, my back pain's completely gone. What did you just do? And I said, oh, I don't know. This is what I do. And then she said, I've got 3 friends. Can I send them to you? And I promise you, this is how it started. And then it just word of mouth. I had people calling me from LA, from Paris, from Chicago. I don't know what happened. It's just I was obviously doing what I was meant to do. And I had this thing I wasn't going to advertise. I wasn't going to go on social media. Like, I've only recently gone on Instagram in the last 12 months, and that's because I had a dream that I had to do it. And 3 weeks later, I got picked up by the Discovery Lab at IONS, which is attached to NASA. It's the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And then they started promoting me to 500,000 people around the world through their newsletter. So I think it's the intention, and I could feel the calling, and I just went with it. And it just, from the day I started doing it, just blew up.
Yes, I mean, word of mouth is very powerful, especially when the professional did a good job. The expert really was up to par. And I can tell you that with one of my guests, I referred to her maybe 10 to 15 of my friends, and they're all pleased with the work she did on them, energy clearing and the removing energy cords and all type of energy related work. So again, she, like you, she doesn't advertise. She was on my podcast on an interview for the first time in her life. So she had to get the courage to come in front of a camera and talk about her life experience and her professional experience. So yes, again, word of mouth is a very powerful marketing tool.
And I think it's if you surrender and you rise to the occasion and you don't question it, I feel that honestly, I'm just a vessel for the work, and it's up to me to honor it correctly. And I have followed the guidance. It's not about fame and money, and it's about authentic work and helping people, because obviously I have access to something that's a profound gift I've been chosen to honor it and do the work. And so I myself see that as a great honor and try and do my best to live my truth and show up authentically with that coming through me. So I don't feel it's me. I feel I'm just the vessel. So I believe that for all of us that are doing authentic work, we're just the vessel from something from another dimension, and we've been chosen, and that's a real honor.
Yes, indeed. And is there anything special to your process in how you tackle this type of healing?
No, I think I just now have mastered it to a point where, because I don't advertise, because I'm very under the radar, I feel that gives me 100% confidence to go in to the session knowing I can get results, because spirit has chosen that person to find me. So they've been brought to me for healing from somebody else, maybe an ancestor on the other side, maybe their guides, but there's always total alignment. And we talk about, people tell me accidents. They were at a dinner party somewhere and somebody told them, and I think there's no accidents, right? It's just alignment. And people, once they cross over to the other side, we all have so many ancestors that are helping us, that we think they're gone, but they're our guardians, and they're right next to us, and they see our struggles. And so I honestly believe there's no other way. If somebody has found me, because I've made it hard to find me, so they're definitely meant to heal. And I've been entrusted with the job of helping their soul get to the other side of their evolution. And it allows me to do it in a really confident way, and I can be very passionate but detached and without ego.
Yes, that's very important. Humbleness and staying grounded is very important for being in service and providing this type of um, healing. And I heard it from other guests as well, and they all agree that they think that the moment it gets to their head, this type of gifts will be taken away.
I totally agree. And I think now more than ever on the earth, people need help, and they've realized that traditional psychology is not getting the results. And I think at last, what we as energetics and the light workers that have been chosen to do the work at this particular time post COVID are showing that it's all within you and you're not broken. There's nothing wrong. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about letting go of what's not yours and falling back in love with yourself and your life.
Yes. Julian, do you have a daily spiritual practice, or you just go with what the spirit has in store for you on that particular day?
Well, I have a saying to my friends that all I can do is get up and put my Nikes on and hope for the best, because I have no control over what happens. And it is a white knuckle ride on a daily basis, but in the best way. So I always do meditation. I always do tapping. I find EFT tapping, I get my clients to do that as part of their homework, and I always get them to keep a diary. I think a diary is the most 4 pages a day. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes of just reflection and observation of where you're getting activated, where you reacted, where you felt good. Allows you to really manage your mental health in such a great way and feel so good about yourself and stay in your narrative. And I do that myself. I feel meditation, tapping, exercise, moving the body, because energy gets so blocked and it's so important. And another ritual is salt baths. That really works for me, either a salt bath or a salt shower. And also the number one thing is celebration. I try and celebrate, as much as I can and stay in gratitude. And sometimes it's as simple as looking at the clouds. I just think it's moving art. Look at the sky and just reflecting on what I'm grateful for on a daily basis, and trying to keep my frequency high and clear in a balanced way so that I'm self-regulated.
Yes, and when looking at the clouds, you are trying to focus to see the bits of the virtual reality we are living in, maybe.
Yeah, I find it's just magical. It's like live art. At any point, you can look up and tune in to the amazing experience of being human.
Yes. Julian, I recently listened to an interview with the Australian grandmother Mulara that talk about the energy of the land. She's in charge of specific energy grids in Australia. How do you feel the energy of Australia at this time?
Well, I think COVID gave it a big shake up, but the land is incredibly sacred, and there's been so many prayers and rituals for thousands of years that we don't even know about. But I think post COVID, there is, at the moment, my experience is I'm seeing a lot of people very dysregulated and very much in fear and anxiety. So there is an unconsciousness here at the moment, and that just could be Melbourne because we were locked down for 2 years. It was very challenging, but I've felt a huge thud, and it gets very affected by the weather too, I've noticed. So people, what I've seen in the people as such is that they've become much more reactionary, and a lot of disassociation has become a big thing, distraction and disassociation. So people are either really diving into their spiritual journey, or they're completely in blockout, and that's keeping them on the run and in hypervigilance. So there's only two types of people here at the moment, but I think that's a lot to do with the long lockdown that we had.
So in other words, more trauma was created through the lockdowns, and some people just cannot recover from that, and it went on top of their existing maybe ancestral or personal trauma.
Exactly. Yeah, you've articulated it perfectly. That's exactly it. They've gone one way or the other. And some people really thrived with the lockdown, and other people, there was a very high rate of suicide. I mean, there was a lot of tragedy around how people just couldn't cope with being isolated. But doesn't that speak volumes about what we're talking about? The most important relationship of your life is with yourself. People will come to me and say, I have a house and I have a husband and I have everything I've ever wanted, and there's something missing and I can't put my finger on it. And I go, yeah, it's you. You're missing from your life. You're not in a relationship with you. You're ticking boxes and you're saying, why aren't I feeling fulfilled? But, ultimately, the fulfillment and our happiness and our love and our state of being is dependent on us, not anyone or anything outside of us. And that has to be really made conscious, that anything you're searching for is within you. And the minute you're going outside of yourself to get relief, you are in an unconscious pattern and you have to change it. That's the thing I try and do, is to get people to realize when they're seeking relief, because the unconscious takes over and you don't even know you're doing it. It might be something you've always done, and we see it. People are addicted to online shopping, or they're obsessively exercising, or they've got to eat their food at a certain, they don't see these things as red flags. They say, well, this is how I feel good, but it's actually not that. It's something's going on, and it's a part of you crying out to be heard. And you have to stop and sit with it and listen and navigate it differently in order to get to peace and happiness.
Yes, and I think the relationship with ourselves is the toughest relationship we could have in our lifetime, because again, it going back to the basic principle, know thyself.
It's the most challenging. It's so much easier to go outside of yourself. And also think about it, if you're not ready to take responsibility, because a lot of people are terrified of their pain. When they talk to me honestly, they say, but if I really give in to this, what if I never stop crying? Or what if I can't get out of bed? Or what if I can't go to my job on Monday? And every time I've got somebody to finally surrender to their unconscious pain and lean in, it's never gone on longer than 3 days. And I've had people say to me, I have battled you for 2 years and it was only 3 days. like, what have I done? I've wasted so much time. I feel the best I've ever felt. I feel free. I can't believe how happy. I've got so much energy. And it was a 3-day turnaround, but they've fought me for 2 years to get to that place. So it's
Wow.
fascinating, right? These limited belief systems that we have on play, that actually getting in touch with understanding ourselves is going to equal pain. And it's much better that we go out there and try and find somebody we've never met, and then we've got somebody to blame when things go wrong.
Yes, indeed. And Julian, I ask this two-part question of every Australian guest. So I hope you don't mind me asking you also, what is your experience connection with Uluru? And have you been in contact or experience this type of contact with Aboriginals?
I haven't been to Uluru myself, but it's the beating heart of Australia, without a doubt. And it's sacred, and it's now being honoured as that for the first time. So, you know, they own the land. And I think everything's been put in alignment in the right way now and honoured in the right way.
And again, have you been in contact with the Aboriginals? Because we know that they are they have a wealth of knowledge.
An incredible, incredible culture. And no, I haven't met many Aboriginal people myself, but the the culture is so rich and so spiritual and so insightful, and there is so much we could learn from them that we haven't, that a lot of their information's been held back. And Australia got colonized, so a lot of things got erased, but one of the most deepest, most spiritual, profound cultures there are, and we have so much to learn from them.
Yes, and in fact, in my discussion with Adrian Emery, he was saying that we should, or the Australian government should hand over the land to the Aboriginals in terms of land keeping, because they know what to do to preserve the riches of the land and keep it properly so it doesn't deplete, and they will control the bushfires in much better way. But looks like the government doesn't necessarily understand um, again what type of knowledge and help they can tap into.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's all about control and keeping people in fear, and they're such a powerful culture. They would, I mean, how much power they would have if the land was handed back to them, and how we would all rise. But the forces that be, that's how it works. Keeping people limited and in control is the agenda of the government. So yeah, I understand, but he's exactly right. If everything could be handed back to them, how things would change, because they just know how to work with the spirit of the land, and they're such highly spiritually evolved people. I wish we had more access to them.
Yes, I read, not her, but I read about incredible stories from those who interacted with them, were healed by them. They're outsiders, but accepted for 2 3 week time frames to go there and live the same way the Aboriginals live. And at the end of that period, they were pretty much healed, and they gain so much respect for that type of lifestyle, which is very, very simple.
So simple and so connected to spirit, and all about honoring spirit and honoring the land in a way that has sort of been erased.
Yes. Julian, how do you see the evolution of humans in the near future? Are we going to succumb to the mounting pressure of becoming transhumans?
I feel very optimistic because I've seen just through maybe the last 6 years the difference in who's coming to me as a client and the conversations I'm having, that there is a definite awakening has taken place in the last few years for the better. And everyone now is using the word energy, which is really exciting because I feel people, it's no longer woo woo, right? You're probably having the same experience. We were, hiding in the background because we're seen as woo woo or something weird. And now we're sort of, people with the knowledge are being honored as thought leaders. And so we're getting listened to. And I think if you have the ability to channel, we're obviously channeling information from other dimensions that are light years ahead of us in terms of awareness, emotional intelligence, technology, you name it. How incredible if that information can be received and honored in the right way. And I've seen it. I've seen miracles of healing take place at my table. There's no way you can explain what's happening, but the clients have changed. People that I would not have thought in a million years would sit in front of me and trust me to do energetic clearing on them, and they've shown up correctly, done their homework, and profound healings have taken place. So I think it's very exciting where we're at, and people, we're in the energetic age, and it's going to turn out really positive because people are going to have to be open to it.
Yes, and I agree with you. And at the same time, I think that the pressure will keep mounting for a while, but the more of us will wake up and understand the potential we have, and we see the healing, the auto healing, the self healing, and the healing in others. We'll realize that we don't need appendices to our brains to download more information or have the internet flashing on our eyebrow, because we can do all this by developing the skills God gave us from the get-go. So all we have to do is to work on ourselves, open our third eye, open our heart, exude love, and all these features will be acquired by just working on the biological machine and living organism that we are.
Yes, I 100%. It's inner technology. And I really believe what I'm teaching is hundreds of years old, and it's how we used to live, and it's somehow got erased from our consciousness. And that's what I'm really teaching is consciousness. And when you have consciousness, you can work with your own inner technology. But what I think has happened is sort of the manual got removed, and people have all these incredible gifts inside them, but they're lying dormant. And the only thing that makes me different is I've got it highly developed so I can help activate people's consciousness so they can start feeling it and working with it themselves and educate them on how to navigate it correctly. And then, like the thing is, then working on yourself becomes exciting and very Harry Potter rather than the traditional method of there's something wrong with me, I'm broken and I've got to go to a therapist. No, this is the most exciting relationship of your life. And you should be getting up every day and going, I wonder what's going to happen today and what I'm going to learn about myself. And I want people to get back into inspiration and celebration of understanding the self.
Yes. So in other words, you have an infinite supply of red pills and a finite numbers of clients.
Yes. It's true. Yes.
Yes. I have to turn to one of my favorite subjects, which is water. I wrote about water. I studied water I researched it for my books. And you live on a land surrounded by water. So I want to know if you have a special relationship with her.
Absolutely. I am a 2-minute walk from the sea, and that's why I live where I live. And whenever I finish with a client, or maybe if I have a day of sessions beforehand, it's a big ritual to walk along the shore and I just hear things. And particularly in the summer, I swim in the morning and the night, and it is life changing for me when I'm in the salt water. So that's why also salt baths, I get a lot of information. I will have friends say, are you having a salt bath anytime soon? I need some answers about things. The minute I get in a salt bath, it's so busy. A friend of mine calls my bathtub the office because I just get so much information when I'm in a salt bath. So I always try and encourage my clients to get into a really committed relationship with water because, we're basically water. It makes sense that, once we connect with water, anything that's not ours can get removed. So if you're not near the ocean, you can always have a salt shower. Just cover yourself in salt and let it sit on your body for 20 seconds and then wash it off, and you won't believe how different you feel. And if you've got a bathtub, soak in salt water. It doesn't have to be fancy, just cooking salt from the supermarket. But if you think about it, our aura is 10 feet out. So it's absorbing and taking away anything that's not ours. So water is a really big thing for me, 100%.
Thank you very much for sharing. Yes, and water these days behaves, I can say erratically, but not in a wrong way. And again, as you mentioned, she can heal, but also she can destroy. She has so many aspects of herself that we really have to pay our respects and be aware and conscious on how we treat and behave water towards water. And one of my major questions in my writing is, are we going to be able to unlock the memory of water in our existence? Is there any special process that we have to go through, or a level of consciousness to go through in order to unlock that memory and understand the history of the universe and everything that happened on Earth?
Well, you've just nailed it there. Consciousness. We're moving into the age of consciousness, and we've been living in unconscious. So I think that's what the future is just once we're in consciousness, you can be fully present and receive. People can, channel any information that they need to live the life they want, but they're living in their unconscious and they don't know it. And it's a different part of the brain. So the unconscious is on the right side of the brain. And that is, we're creating from our unconscious every day. And if we haven't cleared the first 6 years of our life, we're getting up every day and unconsciously recreating our childhood, whether that was good or bad. If we get to move it to the front of our brain, we can be fully present in a very fearless way, which allows us to receive. And that's the biggest thing about consciousness. People don't understand that it blocks you from receiving when you're not conscious. And then you have a story. I have to go out there. I have to work harder. People have come to me, and I've had clients and they're so angry and they go, I've done green juice every day for 5 days and I did 6 yoga classes and I'm still really angry. And I'm saying to them, but it's in you. It's not outside of you. It's just this model that we've been living with for so long that it's, if we do more or work harder, we'll get to consciousness. It's not that. It's about learning to sit with what our unconscious is, understand it. Where did it start? Find the original trauma, readdress it, give it language, experience it, and just let it go. And then that's permanent.
Yes, and you know what? Maybe next time you can tell them you forgot to walk on barbed wire. That's part of the process.
It's true. It's so true. It's crazy that people, I call it ticking boxes. I'm like, you're just ticking boxes. This is an inside job. Happiness and love is an inside job, and it's not outside of you.
Yes, another favorite say that I mention sometimes during my interviews. And Julian, have you met any um, special kids lately that they are born in this timeline, in this life to help us evolve? How do you interact with them?
Oh, I see it all the time, just through my neighbors, my friends. Like, I think children born in the last maybe 12 years, they're so highly evolved. They're so aware, and they've come to change the earth, because they've got a completely different emotional intelligence and a consciousness, and they're a completely different race, but it makes sense, doesn't it? We're just evolving and evolving, and that's why clearing the unconscious is so important, because where we're at compared to grandparents or great grandparents that lived through wars where survival was the name of the game. Now we're meant to live and thrive, but if you've got a program of survival, it holds you back from living. But these children, they don't have it. They're like, life is great, and they work with their emotional intelligence, and they come from love, and it's so inspiring. I can't imagine where the earth is going to be in 20 years from now.
Yes, I agree. The only challenge I see is with the parents, because if they are not red-pilled or educated in a certain direction, they might not understand the behavior of their children, which might look strange to them, and they might take them to the doctor thinking that they are schizophrenic or they have ADHD or,
Oh,
whatever disease they
yep.
might come up with.
I notice that a lot. It's really great you've brought this up, because I've worked a lot with single mums and parents that have children who they tell me the kids are so dysregulated, and they've got them on medication. Once I get the mother on their feet and like owning their stuff, the child just heals, because the child and the parent are so connected. Doesn't it make sense if the parent is dysregulated and not owning and processing their emotions on a daily basis? The child is just the boombox for the parent. And I try and educate my clients when they have children. Stop pointing the finger at your child and see your child as a boombox for where you're at. And once I do that, everything changes. And the parents, like I've had a number of women who were coming to me regularly, and they say, my kids were fighting, and then I went home and they were like these angels, and they've been fine for 3 days. And I said, well, it's just that I got you self-regulated. They're reflecting back to you what you're not owning. So say taking your child to a doctor who then diagnoses and gives them medication for their brain, it kills me. I conscious parenting is a really big thing for me, like trying to educate parents on how to be conscious parents, and to see that these souls are with you for a period of time, and they're more highly evolved than you. So they're your teachers, and then they're showing you and shining a light on what you're not addressing. And that's a challenging thing for parents. But once they get into the groove of it, there's nothing wrong with the kids. The kids heal.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So in fact, your fine print, your disclaimer is this is a non-reversible process. Be careful what you wish for, correct?
Yes, true. Sustainable results, because it's all governed by spirit.
Yes, perfect. Julian, on a previous interview, I heard you mention the presence of your father in the house, and this is for those who work with souls and they want to connect with the soul of the loved ones. So when the soul of loved ones are in the ethereal realm, still close to us, are they there for a particular time period to help us, and then they move on, or are they there for much longer period for other purposes as well? What's the common denominator?
My belief and my experience is you can call on a loved one at any time, and they are there in a heartbeat, and they're often around us. It's just another dimension. It's like they're next to us, but we can't see them. So for me, I've noticed when I was doing clients face to face, I could feel the person in the room 15 minutes before the client came. And then I would say, like, my whole apartment would, on one occasion, I remember my whole apartment smelt of cigarette smoke. And I saw an elderly man in great detail in my mind with like a white shirt and trousers and braces that were maroon and green. Like the details were ridiculous. And I had not met this person before, and I said, look, I'm just going to put this out there. Did you have a grandfather that used to wear braces that were maroon? And that was it. That was all they needed to hear to be open to receiving the work. He smoked cigarettes. His braces were his favorite, and they were green and maroon. The details were ridiculous. So they are always there. So this limited belief that we're alone, that we've lost them, sure, we have to go through the grieving process because we can't call them on the phone. We can't go have lunch, but we have to get into a relationship with them that's now a spiritual relationship, and they will give us signs, and you can feel the love of when they're next to you. And for me personally, I just call on anyone from the other side and they show up in a heartbeat and take care of stuff. So I don't need to feel afraid or alone. I never feel alone. I feel so many people around me, and we all have all these incredible people helping us from the other side. But free will, we've got to be open to it, to receive it and believe it, and get into that relationship of, well, maybe they'll send you a song that you both used to dance to, or maybe you'll get a craving for one of their favorite foods. Like, it's like learning a language of how to communicate. And then once you're open to that, you'll feel nothing but love and feeling them standing next to you and taking care of it. Because once they leave the body, they don't have the restriction like a human form is bondage, right? They don't have restriction of ego, of the mind, of the body. They're living their best life. It's like they've gone from the back of the plane up straight up to first class, and they can help you do anything. And once you know that, we all have these incredible ancestors we can call on for guidance and help and support, and they're watching us. And I find it really sad when people say they feel alone, when I can feel all these people standing around them.
Yes, and sometimes they are so willing to help that they take over the airplane and they, land it themselves.
It's true. They give you an extra serving of the chicken or the fish.
Yes. Um, Julian, you know better than me, maybe, that men are stubborn, but they are in pain and they need help. And based on my research, by just asking my guests, what is the percentage of men versus women that attend their events, or the clients they have, usually is 20, 80, 25, 75 for men versus women. How would you address this issue? What would you tell men in order for them to be convinced that they need help and they have to tap into their trauma and heal it, and be open to everything we discussed so far?
That's such an important issue because male suicide is on the rise, and it's so difficult to get because men have been so programmed to toughen up, and they get these things when they're little kids. Don't act like a girl and suck it up, and men don't cry, that's weakness. They've been so brainwashed that by the time they're 10 they don't know how to tap into their emotions, and it leads to all sorts of problems, right? Because I personally believe men are more sensitive than women. As women, we've been brought up with these rituals of conversation and connection, and they get together and have a wine and you talk and you share. Whereas there was a great study of tribes, indigenous tribes, that how women and men are so different, how they end the day, that the men would all sit around the fire in silence, staring at the fire, and the women would be dancing and chatting and cooking the food and throwing the babies up in the air and giggling. So it's about really breaking down those belief systems that I believe men need it more than women at the moment. Because when I do get to men, and it's not often, they say, this has been life-changing because I've been carrying this pain with me my entire life and I haven't been able to talk to anyone, and I'm so exhausted. And I think we have to really, if we can, create an opportunity for men to lean into being vulnerable, but they've been programmed not to be. So I think it's a really difficult one, but it's of extreme importance. And there's a real urgency for men to be able to get into this work of understanding themselves and their reactions to the world. So they have, they don't get blocked, they don't get traumatized, and it doesn't turn into anger and violence.
Yes, and in fact, while you were talking, one thought came to me that the only place where this ratio is pretty much 50-50, or sometimes even more men than women, is the sacred plant medicine ceremonies, either in Peru or in the countries that allow this type of ceremony. But otherwise, no. And I think is I don't know, maybe perception that they can be men, that they are allowed to cry without anyone judging, because there are more men around. Maybe because they understand that there is a sacred place there and someone is holding space for them. I really don't know the motivation, but again, this is the only place where I found more men or equally number of men and women.
That's it, but how sad is that? It shows you how much this is such a it's a crisis, isn't it, really, that men are not getting the support, the emotional support, and the conditions to heal.
Yes, especially that not everyone can travel to these destinations and go through these type of experiences. And I can also say that there are men who went through 10, 20, 30 sacred plant medicines, and some of them still need help. They are not completely healed.
Well, I think it's a lot to do. If you think about it, the wars were not that long ago. So they've been raised by fathers who have fathers or grandfathers or great grandfathers that were in the wars where feeling was not an option. It was about survival and being tough. And so it's a big one to change that programming. I mean, it's changed with kids under 12. I can see the difference in boys and girls now. There's more of a unity. It's just completely different. But for the adult men at the moment, whenever I've had the chance to work with one of them, as soon as I start talking about the grandparent, I ask them about the grandfather, and how many men came back from war with such heightened PTSD, and there was no understanding for it. There was no mental health option. They just had to get on with it. So all those emotions got blocked. And it's the Russian dolls. What you don't heal in yourself, 100% you will pour into your children. That's why healing yourself is so important, because it's a ripple effect. And Russian dolls, it just gets handed down. And I see it. I'm often working with healing the wounds of a great grandparent that survived a war or survived a trauma or lived so many years ago, when and the great granddaughter is carrying it. And once that gets lifted, they're free and they feel like themselves again. So imagine what men are going through when they're the great grandchild of a soldier. It's
Yes.
just, yeah, it's very, very, I pray that it changes for men, because they're desperately in need of a place to be vulnerable and to heal.
Yes, thank you. So the men out there, please
Please
take
call
care of
me.
yourself. Yeah,
Yes,
call
please reach out.
Julianne.
Reach out. I'm here for you.
Julianne, let's turn to something much more joyful. So if you would have the power to give humanity a gift, what would that be?
Consciousness and celebration. That is the key to a great life. When you're conscious and you see celebration as important, I think it's been erased from our culture in a way that it's indulgence or it's luxury or it's only for the weekend. No, every day, celebrate your life. It's the most incredible ritual, because it's joy, and joy is the most powerful frequency. Celebration and joy, I would choose that over meditation. Like, it's so easy to do, to find you, everyone can do it every day, but people have forgotten how to celebrate.
Yes, and in fact, I think I was guided to write about increased consciousness in my books, because this is pretty much the silver lining in all three books I wrote. And on the one I'm working on right now, it's increased consciousness, because only this aspect of our life will raise us above the decadence we are living in pretty much right now.
Yeah, and I think it's that to have that constant self-regulation when you're conscious, you don't have to be in primal fear. You don't have to fear emotional ambush. You're not, true enlightenment is being unaffected by the external world. So that's just your own internal self-regulation and understanding yourself and your reactions to the world and the people around you, and knowing when you're getting triggered and how to get yourself back into self-regulation and joy. And that is all about observation and reflection. But if you're in the need for relief, you're actually in avoidance and disassociation. You're looking outside the world to not feel or to get relief from this emotion. So training people to observe and reflect and go within is the key to consciousness. But it's challenging because then, they start feeling everything that they've been on the run from. And maybe they've been on the run from it their entire life. And it scares them because it's the unknown. So people choose to stay stuck because maybe it's more familiar and it's easier than the unknown. So it's just encouraging people to have courage to dive into the unknown and seeing it as not these are my circumstances, these are my opportunities. I have opportunities to create change and find out who I really am and have a different experience of being in a human form and getting excited about it rather than fearful.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, beautiful. So, Julianne, a lot of my guests, they live in joy like yourself, and they appreciate what they have, and sometimes they decide to write a book and write about their experience and about the cases they are working on. Do you plan to work on a similar project as well?
That's a great idea. I haven't even thought about it, to tell you the truth, because I'm on such a crusade to reach people and create consciousness. But further down the track, it would be a really useful tool, I imagine, for people. But I have I set up an Instagram with my teachings on it. So they're sort of channeled teachings. And my goal was that the Instagram could be a place where people could get maybe healing from, because the teachings are channeled and maybe they just read it at that point. So there's a lot on my Instagram about, which is actually my writings as such at the moment, of my experience of this work and how to just click in and maybe observe and reflect in the moment after reading things, because I feel like we don't need a lot of information, but the truth will set you free and you'll be guided to a person, a place, or a thing that will allow you to find the answer that will awaken you to your truth, and that can just open the door to you just reflecting and observing and coming up with a new way of doing things.
Yes, and if you decide to write the book, somewhere at the bottom with size 8 font, say "motivated by Claudiu." Okay.
Yes. Yes, I have to give you a credit if I ever do it.
Julianne, what's your perception of God?
Love, pure love. That's it. Unconditional, pure love. And it's available to all of us. It's inside of us. It's not outside of us. It's not in a person we've never met. It's not in a house we haven't bought. God is always there. It's just pure love, consciousness, and support. And everyone has it within them and just has to tap within. God is within.
Thank you very much for sharing as we are approaching the end of our lovely conversation. Do you have any final thoughts?
I would like to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk today about the work I'm doing. And I really pray that people hear it and I can somehow give them relief through this conversation. And I just really want consciousness for everyone, because I see the suffering, I see the torture, and I just know it doesn't have to be like that, because I'm not living that reality. There's another option available. You just have to do the work and make consciousness the goal and fall in love with yourself and your life.
Thank you very much once again. Much love from my side here, and all the best.
Lots of love from Australia, Claudia. And thank you it's been such a joy talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, leave a comment. And until next time, love and gratitude.